Leadership.
Thank you. Thank you.
So much for agreeing to do this little episode. I'm excited to hear about you and what you're doing.
Sure. Well, where to start? Where to start? Do you
Well,
want?
just give us a little introduction on who you are and where you're working.
Great. Well, I am Jolla Cuppy, and I'm the Director of Education and Outreach at Jolla Playhouse.
Awesome. So what does that look like for you to do that work? What are you doing on a daily basis?
Sure. Well, on a daily basis, it's actually rather unpredictable on a daily basis, to be honest. It's hard to tell you exactly, like, go here, go there, because every single day is new and different and exciting. There's so many things that are going on. We have over a dozen programs that are happening throughout the year. And so my main focus is overseeing all of those programs, making sure the right people are in the right place at the right time. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I do all of those things, but I'm making sure that there are different heads to those particular programs. And I couldn't do it without my Associate Director of Education and Outreach, Bridget Caviola, and she really focuses on a lot of our in-school programs. And then I'm more focused on sort of overarching mission and departmental budgeting, as well as I'm the producer for the POP Tour, which is our performance outreach program, which tours across San Diego County, and it's a brand new theater for young audience piece that we commission and then produce every year. And then close to about 25,000 students end up seeing it throughout the year, as well as we have an engagement guide that teachers and students benefit from. Our teaching artists go into those schools and help lead workshops in preparation for those students to see the show. So it's a pretty comprehensive experience. And I lead the production elements of those things right now. So as it relates to where I am right now, we are actually, I just finished a meeting that I had with new board members that will be coming into our board. Our fiscal year just started April 1st, and so it's sort of our new year, and we have welcomed some new people to our board, so we just finished with that. And then we're also just gearing up for the summer. I'm sure lots of people are doing that right now. Yeah. But our summer programs, we have about 200 students, grades 3rd through 12th grade, that come here on site at UCSD and La Jolla Playhouse campus. And we have a myriad of things going on all at the same time. So it's a bit.
What's the thing that you're most excited about right now?
Well, I guess in our industry, it's really difficult to not be excited by things that are happening in our personal and our professional lives, especially because they permeate with each other so often. And I just have to say, personally, what's exciting to me is I actually have almost a 7-month-old. So my world is so much about like her and focusing on her development, and what should I be doing to help sort of usher her along through this process. And every single day it's something new, and she's experiencing and growing in ways that are just remarkable to witness. And I think that actually has really influenced how I see things developing here, and how intentional we have to be to help make sure that the programs that we're doing institutionally are like aligned to the future hopes and dreams that we have, and so I think that work takes time and effort, but I'm really excited by making sure that we're making decisions now that will hopefully really come back to benefit us 5, 10, 20 years later.
Yeah, so being a mom has really helped you sink into the value of what you're offering.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's many ways that I'm just considering how do we artistically, as an institution, how do we engage with someone from like day one of life to all the way to the very last day of life. And because I witnessed my young daughter come to our performance outreach program tour, our POP Tours public performance mid-March. And she's almost 7 months now. She was just a little over 5 months old, and she was so engaged even then, and typically speaking, I wouldn't have been that person to bring a young infant to a live theater experience, but this was for young audiences to start with. And I was like, well, let's just see what happens. And she was so engaged, and she was sitting there on the floor really captivated by what was happening with the performers, and it just made me think about how powerful theater can be, especially like for someone from very, very, very young, to how it really shapes our whole perspective on the world as we develop. And so that's something I've been thinking about a lot, regarding how do we create programs that can help escort people through that.
Yeah, that is so cool. So how did you get into this field? What was your pathway into?
Yeah, so I like to say this is my origin story. I found myself growing up in a situation where I moved around a lot. My dad was in the Army. My mom and my dad, there was some dysfunction there, and so we really didn't live somewhere very long. And so I went to 13 different schools, my K through 12 education, and I found myself, because of that, needing to have something I could always go back to or connect to, and that was theater for me. And so when I ended up graduating from high school and having much more control of my future and my where I wanted to go in my life, I ended up getting a degree in theater performance and English education. And because I lived such a nomadic lifestyle from an early age, going into theater as a performer professionally was something that wasn't very attractive to me, because from that point of when I was, what was that? Gosh, I was so young then. I didn't see how artists actually functioned with stability and security in a way that I know actually can happen now. And there's lots of ways to do that now, but like when I was so young, I wasn't really aware of that. And so I wasn't wanting to make that commitment. And so I decided to just go right into getting a master's in arts and teaching and get my teaching credential. And I wanted, but I was still very focused on the fact that I wanted to do the thing that I love to do the most, and that was to be part of the theater process. So I decided to become a high school theater teacher. And so I taught high school theater and English actually for 9 years in Oregon. And then when I was about year 7 or so, I was starting to really feel burned out, to be honest. There's so many things that our classroom teachers have to deal with that are just so unnecessary. But in my situation, I was also teaching English, and I had about 200 students on my caseload. I was directing and producing 5 shows a year. I was really working 70, 80 hours a week. And my artistic self, even though I was having to be artistic and creative all the time, my artistic stuff was really struggling. It was starving, actually. And so I was like, okay, I need to figure out another way of balancing all of this, because in this scenario, it doesn't work for me. So I actually left the classroom, and all of my amazing students. I have just some incredible stories that I miss those stories, being a part of that world now. But I decided to make the choice, and I went back to grad school, and I got my MFA in musical theater at San Diego State, actually. And so my husband and I packed up our house and our 2 dogs, and we moved to San Diego State, typically, yeah, pretty much moved to San Diego. yeah, absolutely. And ended up graduating with my MFA there in 2016, actually. And while I was there, I connected with people here at the Playhouse and became a teaching artist with them. And then I ended up sort of working my way up, and I was an associate director of education outreach for a few years. And then actually, my first day as director of education started January 7th. So I'm rather new to this position now, but sort of that's how I came to be where I am right now.
Yeah, very cool. So you mentioned that artist part of you was kind of starving when you were doing the full-time teaching. And I know when you're just giving it all out and you're not getting it, it can be depleting. How is that now for you in this more administrative role? Are you finding ways to feed that artistic part of you?
Yeah, I found myself thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I'm compromising too much of that artistic self, coming into an administrative role. But I'm finding actually it's a little of the contrary. I have found a way that the demands that I actually have now are actually completely different than what I had as a classroom teacher. I mean, I had constant people around me, responsibilities, and supervising, and all the things, and like the safety and well-being of these people were on my shoulders all day long. That mental energy, that spiritual energy, is like so draining, and so I couldn't think creatively in any of the pockets of time I'd have. This is all for me. I know a lot of amazing teachers out there that can do it, and I just, I support them and want to give them as much resources as I can now, but I just couldn't do it for myself. So, finding ways now to be artistic is by communicating what I need to my team, communicating what I need to my supervisors here. I actually just finished directing a show at Jolla Playhouse, so I directed Cabaret. There are ways that we have to find these creative outlets for ourselves. So we need to support one another, especially when we get bogged down with like spreadsheets or meetings or things like that. We have to reconnect to those artistic selves that we know are in there. And it's usually why we're doing the work we're doing now. I found myself in my associate director role thinking that my job was to help artists find their teacher self and help teachers find their artist self. So we had a lot of programs and things that were to support and resources to support that. And I feel like there's no reason why that can't apply to the administrative lives that we lead as well,
So just bring like a lot of creativity to the way that you interact with your team.
Absolutely. And I currently feel like in my new position, I have a lot of that artistic self completely satisfied as I'm seeing how I can contribute to creating a safe space for others and also provide the permission they need to actually be able to do the work. And as a producer, I'm definitely there to help make sure things sort of stay on time and on budget and things like that. But I'm also there to like help us be as creative as we possibly can, because I believe that boundaries can set us free creatively, actually. And to know that I can contribute that way in this work right now is really liberating. There's also another thing that happened, or I heard someone say once that really stuck with me. And as I'm thinking about balancing life and work and art and things like that, I'm like, well, you can have all things. You just can't have them all at the same time.
Right.
And to note that when I'm doing the administrative work, doesn't mean that all of a sudden my artist self is gone. It doesn't mean that I can't contribute in those ways at some point in time. And when that time comes, then I, assess and figure out how to do that and know that that's going to be part of my focus for those few weeks or months or whatever it is. Communicate what I need to the team that I work with, and we're supporting each other, because it is that life-work balance, and you can't do it all on your own,
Yeah.
If you don't communicate, it doesn't help either, right?
Well, and I would imagine that your experience in theater, your experience as an educator, all really inform your work as the producer, as the person who's the creator of this whole big thing. You can really relate to some of the challenges that are out there, and like you said, create safe spaces for them to do the work.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So, are there any like local artists who are doing things that are really inspiring you these days?
Local artists that are inspiring. You know what? I think I don't know if this is the right answer you're looking for, but I find myself thinking that the local artists that are inspiring to me are the people that don't think of themselves as artists, that are artistic in all the things that they're doing, but then don't ever have someone like call it out. And so that's really exciting to me right now. And I think some of the programs that we are doing help become a conduit for that for folks. Like we have one program that's just starting called our Innovation Lab. And this particular program is going to be helping people in the workplace to learn how they can be more creative, become collaborators, be better communicators, and be better critical thinkers, And we are using theater to help them practice those skills to be those things. And when I start to see, someone who's been an HR manager for 15, 20 years, all of a sudden start to see that they can actually do theater and improv with a partner and realize that they are creative in ways they never thought they had before, that's actually really exciting to me. And seeing that at an adult that you thought would have had that capacity, they would have just thought they had that capacity. Most people don't. They need to been given the invitation to do so.
Yeah, well, and I think it's so fun. I'm an expressive arts therapist, so I do a lot of coaching, like professional development and stuff, where we use a lot of arts to get people to reflect about their experiences in the workplace in creative ways and find solutions together and build connections. And it is so cool to see sort of the arts being given to people in a way that it takes the pressure away from some sort of performance or having to be an artist, but just
Right.
a creative person who's moving through life in these other ways and giving them access to that and giving them a fuller experience that way. So that sounds really cool.
It is really cool because I also find myself, as a high school teacher, I saw the community that was created when we were to come together. And then I also was like sad when my students would graduate from high school and they go off to the real world and they didn't have those opportunities to be in that community anymore. And I just think that is such a mistake as our society of like, how can we continue to find ways even as adults to find and hold space for one another in a community that's creating together. And it can be on this sort of level of being in the workplace, or it can be even like, us coming together to read a play out loud, or just to be together, is really important.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's one of the things I want to do with this Artful Leadership community, because right now I've just been interviewing all these different artists, leaders in San Diego that have been like identified by other artist leaders. It's been kind of like this shout out process, and so much of it is what you're talking about. It's not necessarily people who are like the big faces of the arts, but people
Right.
who do really creative work in a lot of different ways. And I want to find ways to bring this community of artists together and see what happens when we all hang out together, if we took on a project together, or all of us are interacting with youth in these really interesting ways. We're aware of these social justice themes. We're aware of these developmental themes and our own journey as artists as we grow up. So I'm really curious to see what would happen if we kind of come together.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. I'm just trying to find ways to bring people together who are kind of in this field of creating awesome opportunities.
Because I think that's the fuel we need to continue giving, to other folks, and being able to provide space and hold that space for other individuals that need it at whatever age they are, yeah, there has to be a way for us to support one another in those ways. It just has to be, because we figure it out for other people. Why is it always sort of more difficult for us to figure it out for ourselves? That feels wrong. Yeah. So I hope that we can definitely make it happen. And and I'm just throwing it out there. If the Jolla Playhouse can be a part of something or host something or whatever it might be, like, let me know. That I know institutionally, our mission is to be a safe harbor for the unsafe and surprising. And the push that we currently have is about how do we also, we are developing some incredible creative teams from all around the world to do some really exciting projects. Yes. Yet at the same time, we also understand the importance of the fact that there is a local community that's rich and diverse and has so many stories and so many talents. And if there's a way for us to engage with that local community in a deeper way, then we absolutely want to. So that's something I just am also plugging out in the world and opening that door for that too.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, now I know why you were sent my way.
Destiny.
Yes. So cool. So let me think. Some of the other things that I wanted to ask you. Are there any, I asked you about like local artists that might inspire you. Are there any thinkers or authors or philosophers or, folks who are doing stuff out in the world that you're feeling inspired by? Or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I'm inspired by what's happening in the creative youth development movement. This type of work has been something that's been around. I mean, a high school theater teacher is doing this type of work every single day, thinking about the whole person, being a counselor, understanding mental health. How does theater continue to give us, the tools that we need to be a better human being? Or I'm speaking from a theater's perspective, but of course, all arts, right? And I find myself thinking that, having it called out and identified in this way and provide so many more people into the conversation for us to collaborate. As a classroom teacher, I would have just loved to be able to have such a network of individuals and companies and organizations to know and pull from, and know that I could send my students to and have them be a part of things. It just would have been pretty remarkable to have that type of opportunity for them. So the more we can do that type of work, and the more that we can come together and realize that we live in a world of abundance versus scarcity, we really do, the better it's going to be for everybody, and if we can lift each other up and, many hands make the load lighter type of thing, I think that's the smarter way to doing things. So I'm really inspired by that. And to note that we are, in the last couple of years, really, it's really in its infancy, this sort of national movement, and to note that San Diego is being, looked at as a model for this for other locations is pretty remarkable, and actually I hold that responsibility in a way that's really purposeful, and I really take it seriously. That okay, so if we're gonna make this possible, we gotta come together. We gotta make something happen, and I think about exponential impact a lot as it relates to our programs. How do our programs not just serve a one and done scenario, which there are moments that really, is needed, and that's okay. But what about if there's a way that we design our programs to make exponential impact, meaning that our contribution sets up this domino effect of contribution that, I can say, we were a part of. We can't take ownership of all the things that have happened from that. That's the whole point. But we can say that we started the fire, or we pushed the first domino down to really allow so many more people to be impacted. And so just connecting in that level and thinking about that has also helped me refine sort of how we navigate the work that we do in a way that makes sense. And I think the Creative Youth Development Network is one way of making exponential impact. If we can organize, if we can pull our resources together, then just think about how we can set a standard for other locations and to do the same thing, which would make that exponential impact for, each community. So that's what exciting.
It really is so exciting. And when I look at a bunch of stuff, go to the conference next week, and there's just this huge San Diego contingency that's going to show up and train and offer opportunities, and then we get to connect with all these other people. I'm so excited to see what to come out.
And they're thinking about having the right people in the right time in the right place. I think San Diego is such a community that has so many right people. There's so many right people, and it feels like the right time. And, coming from Oregon, where things are different over the state and the resources are different, I actually didn't even know what a teaching artist was when I was going into undergrad and being a classroom teacher in Oregon, because some history of that state robbed arts funding away a couple decades ago. And I was the only theater teacher in my entire school district, and it was just something to know that here in California, it's the focus. I mean, we feel sometimes that there's not enough, but to just talk from somebody who came into California and know what there is out there differently, there is a lot of resources here. There's so many people here. There's so much more focus, and so many more organizations that want to support the work that we're doing. And so I feel really excited to be here at this time with the right people. Yeah.
So, if let me back up.
Sure.
How would you like community members who are seeing this to connect with you? There's some way that you would like to be interacting with the community?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on sort of your pathway, I guess, to think about it this way. We actually started something a couple years ago called the Educators Roundtable. And this idea was just a circle of teaching artists and teachers that can come together to pool resources, to share knowledge, to find ways of just like supporting one another. So we have a Facebook page. If you go to Jolla Playhouse Educators Roundtable, I think if you just search for it, it'll show up. It's one of those pages that is public for people to find, but then you can't see all the people in it, just sort of like safety. And I felt like, initially I wanted to create a safe space, right, online that people felt like they could, be a part of it. So if anyone wanted to check that out and request to be a part of it, I'm the one that goes and approves people to be on the page. And I rarely ever say no. I mean, it's usually some sort of random, person with a weird photo that I don't like approving.
Yeah.
But in the end, like that's a great place where I post any event postings or workshops, or grants or any like interesting thing that comes across my desk or my associate director's desks, or if somebody sends it to me or they want to post, like it's just a place where everybody can just put stuff.
Yeah.
So I would love it if folks knew that existed. And then we also have, for those of you out there in the community, know that there's something called ARROW, which is Arts Education Resource Organization, and it is definitely much more focused on arts education in the schools. But I'm the professional development chair for that organization, and I find myself thinking that we have many, many opportunities there that people, teaching artists from any organization can be a part of it for a nominal fee. But if you're an ARROW organization, which a majority of the arts organizations in San Diego are, they can attend for free, and there's all these other things that are going out there. And so I would highly encourage people to connect and check that out. As well as if anyone just wanted to shoot me an email or call me, or sometimes we find ourselves thinking that things are so, shut off from ourselves because we don't have that, initial connection or whatever. But what I have found is showing initiative in that way of hey, I'm here and I would love to know more about this, or let's have coffee or whatever. I really respond to, because I'm oh, wow, that person's really taking action and I want to help them figure that out. I mean, it's sometimes harder for me to be a blanket invitation to anyone because I don't know how to serve them, right? But if folks come to me saying, I really would love to know more about X, Y, or Z, then I'm absolutely, this is how I know what I know about, or here are some other people I know that would help you do that or whatever. So that would be another way, perhaps.
Yeah. So how would you want us to just put your email address out with the video, or?
Yeah, you could do the email address. That would be, that'd be just fine. And, my phone number, you're more than welcome to give me a call. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, then we'll do that. Any last words for folks who might be watching today?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes important for us to stay connected to our own art, and stay connected to the why behind the work that you're doing for yourself. And don't be afraid to share that. And don't be afraid that if you haven't done that art for a long, long time, that it's just gone away, that it makes you less than or a fraud or that imposter syndrome that a lot of us sort of deal with, especially when we get sort of cornered into this administrative sort of world that we live in, because that's the way that things have to be sometimes. But because you're in this world, you're providing space for others to be in it too. So don't forget that you deserve a space in it as well. And I think that that's something that I'm trying to balance and execute for myself. And now that I have this new sort of label of mom, like I really want to make sure that my daughter doesn't ever feel pigeonholed in one area or the other, like that she knows that she has the capacity to be a multidimensional, layered, complicated, beautiful individual that can have it all. Maybe just not all at the same time.
Right. Well, that was beautiful and so aligned with the same message that so many other artists that I've been talking to have been putting out there. So I love that sentiment. It's out here in art.
Great.
So
Great.
that's awesome. Well, super cool. It has been really fun to get to know you a little bit.
Likewise.
Is there anything else that you would want to put out there or talk about that we haven't hit?
I don't think so. I just also, as we're thinking about that, maybe perhaps that we find an opportunity to, I think that this is going to be happening with some of the efforts that are going on with CYD and with organizations coming together, but just a way for us to then build space to take action on it all, right? So finding the ways to do that for each other by supporting, by showing up, by providing, open invitations to certain things, that type of thing. And if you ever want to come and check anything out here at Jolla Playhouse, I'd be more than happy to, open our doors and give you a tour or tell you a little bit about how you can get, tickets. And, there's lots of ways of figuring things out. And I'd love to make sure to be a resource to anyone who's interested.
Cool. One of the things that if people want to find you, they can find you on Facebook with that Educators Roundtable.
Yep. Or personally, you can just, check if you want to be my Facebook friend. I don't care. That'd be great. I mean, you're going to see a lot of pictures of my daughter.
Facebook and
yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah, I have an Instagram. I think it's at Jolla Cuppy, and then I think it's pretty, self-explanatory. And yeah, my email, jcuppy@ljp.org. Yeah.
And is there like an education branch, the Playhouse education Instagram or anything like that?
You know what? There is not. There is not. We try to bring it all together so that way even education stuff that happens. So if you went to our Jolla Playhouse Instagram account, you'll see stuff from education and our season and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's all there. All right. Well, awesome. It was so great to meet you.
It was nice to meet you too.